And that's my cue. So we'll go ahead and begin. Thank you all for coming. This is the President's Panel. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to hear from the presidents of our 6 allied organizations of architecture. What we're going to start with is introductions. Everybody will take a minute to introduce themselves and just describe what their organization is. And then we'll move into some structured questions that I've written out and that have been distributed beforehand. So we're hoping about halfway, a little after halfway through the session, we'll be able to open to audience questions. So if you have questions for these amazing leaders and presidents of these big organizations, make sure to write them down and be ready. And I'll, at some point in the meeting, ask for them. And you can unmute and say them out loud if you'd like to, or you can send them in the chat and I'll read them. We'll take just a couple of minutes per person to answer these questions. They're pretty big, so I hope that our presidents are ready. But we do only have an hour here, so I hope you're all excited. And presidents, thank you again for coming. I'm very excited for these conversations. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll take the first intro and then I'll turn it over just on the order in my screen. So we'll have Robert Gonzalez after me. So if you don't know who I am, then you haven't been attending this conference correctly, but I am Scott Cornelius. I'm the president of the AIAS for the next 7 months. So I hope that you all know what the AIAS is. It's the student component within these 6 organizations. We represent student interests and kind of the future of architecture. It's a very important position among this group. So very excited to be here, and I'll turn it over to Robert Gonzalez. And Robert, you're muted right now. Still muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thanks. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here. I am Robert Gonzalez. I'm president of ACSA. This is my 3rd year on the board. I am the dean of the School of Architecture and Planning at the University of New Mexico. And I'm a registered architect. I'm also trained as a historian, and I'm mostly been an educator. So thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, thank you. And next I'll turn it over to Dan Hart.
Hi, Scott. Thanks. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today. I'm Dan Hart. I'm the Executive Vice President of Architecture for Park Hill. I'm located in Austin. We're a large AE firm building community in Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. And I grew up in a small farming community in North Texas of about 3,000 people. And my little school library had 1 book on architecture in it. It was a Frank Lloyd Wright biography. And I was apparently the only kid to ever check that book out. And I did so many times, the librarian gave that book to my parents 5 years after I graduated. And I'm proud to say I still have that book in my library. I went to Texas Tech, degrees in architecture and structural engineering, and began my career as a structural engineer. Became licensed as both an architect and engineer, and taught senior level engineering courses for architects. And I am currently serving as the president of the American Institute of Architects. It's a pleasure to be with you all.
Great, thank you. And I'll go to Alfred Vidari.
Thank you, Scott, and good morning, afternoon, everyone. My name is Alfred Vidari. I am the current president of NCARB. Home for me is Fort Worth, Texas. So Dan and I enjoy the state together as well, and are longtime colleagues and friends. I had the pleasure of being the chair of the Texas Architectural Licensing Board for 7 years, 11 years total as the gubernatorial appointee there. And for those of you that may, hopefully all of you do know what NCARB is, a little bit about it. We are an organization of the 55 licensing jurisdictions across the country and territories. And obviously, hopefully you know about us through records and through the AXP and ARE experience that you have in terms of that journey. At home, I am an owner, even though I'm in the process of transitioning out of ownership of a multidisciplinary firm, about 1,000 people, 28 offices across the country. And I've been there 28 of the 128 years. And I've been involved with NCARB 15, 16 years. I have to go back and do the math in there, but and I appreciate and excited to be here with all of you today.
Great, thank you. And we'll go to Rebecca O'Neill.
Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca O'Neill, and I'm the current president of the National Architectural Accrediting Board. And I'm sure you know our organization is an accrediting organization. We accredit over 172 programs in architecture, and some other programs are in the pipeline. I'm originally from Tennessee, and now I'm an educator at Auburn University, Alabama. I've been here almost 23 years now, and I used to be one of the young folks, so I envy all of you being current students, and it's quite an honor to be here with you today, and I look forward to this discussion.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, we'll go to Jason Pugh.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to be here. My name is Jason Pugh. I'm a licensed architect and certified planner and newly appointed principal with Gensler, based out of their Chicago office. And I am also the national president of NOMA. I am just now starting the second year of my 2-year term as the president of NOMA. For those who do not know, may have never heard of NOMA, NOMA is the National Organization of Minority Architects. We just recently celebrated our 50th anniversary of our founding, which was in 1971. And we have both professional chapters and student chapters all across the country. My background itself, I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Went to undergrad at Howard University, one of 7 HBCUs that has an accredited architecture program. And I received my master's degree in urban design and architecture from Columbia University in New York. Really excited to be here today with all the presidents, the collateral, and the students on the call. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. So I'll explain our kind of framework of how we're answering these questions, how we're looking at these questions briefly, and then we'll go with the first one. So I've asked beforehand for these presidents to look at these questions and kind of analyze them through the frameworks of changes in policy, changes in culture, and changes in education. These 3 types of changes that the AIAS and our students are really focused on and really interested in, and kind of our system for making lasting change. So you can't have just one of the 3 to make a real change. In my mind, you need to have all 3 to make a change that sticks around. So I just wanted to throw that out there really quickly. That's kind of our framework for these answers. But the first question is just that over the past 2 years, many organizations have been forced to reassess our priorities, including the AIAS and including all of yours. So just to get us started, what are the 3 largest issues your organization is focusing on right now? And so I'm just going to kind of randomize the order that I go in here, and we'll go backwards for the first question. So I'll start with Jason.
Sure, absolutely. So, well, obviously every organization has had to, I think, stop, pivot, and dramatically adjust both our planned schedules and events and strategies for engagement with our valued members and teams during this ever-changing global pandemic. We initially had to adapt our communication and workflows to this 100% virtual world, while at the same time maintain efficiencies and connections for our members to have with their local chapters and national leadership. So I would say keeping the organization and all of our chapters going and active and engaged has been the first and biggest challenge by far. The second challenge, and I'll call it maybe even opportunity, that came up stemmed from the public outcries and national focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion following the senseless murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020. DEI was already a growing and pressing issue in our industry, but the explosion that unfolded after his death was remarkable and beyond anything that we could have predicted. Within an instant, I would say every organization, firm, company, and entity across the industry was forced to look themselves in the mirror and face the blatant and long accepted inequities and disparities that have been deeply rooted in the profession. And NOMA was the first organization most people reached out to. The challenge that came from this, that now NOMA faces, is to be smart and strategic with who we partner and invest our time and resources with. We've quickly realized that while everyone wants to partner with NOMA in this moment, not everyone is sincerely in support of our mission and ready to do the hard work. It takes a couple of meetings and conversations for our leadership to find out which organizations are simply checking a box and looking for a headline, something to point to and say, yes, we care about diversity. Look what we're doing with NOMA, versus those people, those organizations like the collaterals here, who realize the challenges and problems that we face will not be fixed overnight. And together we have to roll up our sleeves, dig in our heels, and fight against the systemic racism that has plagued our industry together. So the last challenge that I would say now is what's next? You know, we're slowly coming out of this pandemic, but the endless variants, the stop and go CDC policies and mandates, and overall fear around this virus across our membership has made it really difficult to get back into a routine and back into the swing of things. So it's really hard to plan ahead for the year with all of our members exhausted from the pandemic and itching to reconnect in person, but we still don't know how these variants of the pandemic is going to play out. So those are the three biggest challenges that NOMA has faced in this moment.
Great, thank you very much. And we'll go to Rebecca.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks, Jason. That was great to hear. Our organization, NAB, I would say our top three, they're all interrelated, but we have recently, I'm sure you know, many of you participated in it, we revised our NAB conditions for accreditation for schools into the 2020 conditions from 2014, and there's quite a substantial change from previous years, and I think it's commendable the direction that it's going in, and we've been working on implementing those conditions now. So that's been one of or really the top priority, as well as training people and how to go into schools and make assessments, and training schools how to present the information in order to be peer reviewed, to be assessed. So that's, I guess, the first one. We've also had a lot of challenges in technology, but it's given us an opportunity to grow. We're working on a big accreditation management system so that everybody can have access to it, and it'll be much easier to interact with. And then I'd say, sort of as a subset of the conditions and procedures, we have some really sort of big issue topics, including diversity, equity, and inclusion, climate change, leadership collaboration. There are a lot of program criteria now that have been established for programs, not just student criteria like we used to have, but program criteria. And so we're working on the first round of visits that have just happened this past fall. And it's been really exciting. We're learning a lot from all of the teams that have been visiting, and we're able to make some adjustments as we go. Thanks.
Thank you. And next up, we'll go to Alfred.
Great, thank you, Scott. So last summer, when I entered as the NCARB president, kind of came to the position with a lot of thoughts, energy, and focus of where I would hope that we could steer the organization during my particular year. One of the first ones that I teed up is I said, we're going to use this as the year. We're going to explore additional paths to licensure. What's that future look like in terms of a future path to licensure? And I've given the example very quickly that today, if we all had to design a path to licensure of a clean piece of paper, my guess it would look very different than the path we currently have established with the 3 E's. So that's one that we've been leaning heavily into, kind of doing blue sky, exploring the what ifs and the why nots, and looking at how might we craft that as a more contemporary path forward. The second one, which was really near and dear to me, and you've heard this comment already this afternoon, having the great honor and responsibility of being the first Hispanic Latino president in the 100+ year of the organization. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was top of mind, top of order. Now, we as an organization had actually been doing things and moving in that direction, but I said, we are going to continue to really focus and push in this area. So we have done some amazing things and amazing work that is ongoing, and maybe I'll get to share a little bit more of that a little later on in the conversation. And then the third thing that I'd say that is a really important element that I'd like to make sure everyone's aware of is what we call the analysis of practice. Analysis of practice is an industry-wide kind of check the pulse beat of our industry today and looking into the future of those that are candidates, those that are licensing candidates, practitioners, code officials, allied professions. And it's really an important look every about 5 to 7 years. And it's been more than that since we've done it because of the pandemic, that really becomes a benchmark, that we take that information that from other practitioners and those in the path that really start to say, what do we need to be thinking about and how do our programs need to align, our AXP experience program and even the ARE. So those are just three of probably the many things that we're juggling at any given time that are probably top of mind for me sharing this morning.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we'll go to Dan.
Yeah, I wonder if you all would agree with me. I think that architecture is basically an optimistic profession. And I know my friend Alfred Vidari shares that sentiment. In hearing Rebecca and Jason talk about what's happening in their organizations, I hope you see that in all of these organizations, that as the productivity guru David Allen says, there really are no problems. They're just projects. I love the optimism in that sentiment. And I think it's a great mantra for architects. Problems are just as yet undefined projects, meaning we can do something about these big challenges that we face as a society. And I would tell all of you in the audience that design thinking that your education is giving you right now enables you to do projects. That's what it's really all about. And so no matter how serious and overwhelming our challenges may be, architects can do something about them. And I think it's up to us to find those things and to do them. And I think what's happened over the past 2 years in this global pandemic, it's become really clear. The built environment is central to the quality of life at every level. And that means that as architects, we're uniquely equipped to help. And so the American Institute of Architects is focused on two priorities. And we feel like these are what speak most to this moment in history. And those two things are climate and equity. And so you may know in 2019, AIA members overwhelmingly approved a resolution making climate action our top priority. And there really were two decisions in that decision. The first was, how do we focus on something so that we can really make meaningful difference in something of substance? And the second decision was, that thing is climate. There's nothing more important on our plates than climate. Then, of course, as Jason so eloquently outlined, in 2020, we saw the murder of George Floyd, and we decided we needed to expand our vision of what AIA was about. And we pledged to pursue racial equity, both in our association and in our profession, and also most fundamentally in the communities that we build, with the same urgency that we approach the challenges of climate. So those two priorities really are at the heart of everything we do as an association. We're not approaching these priorities as separate, distinct issues. They're integrated and meshed in everything we do, from our honors and awards programs, our partnerships, our conference programming, our tools and resources. Climate and equity are woven throughout every aspect of what we do. And I think architects have so much to contribute in the building of healthy, safe, equitable, sustainable communities that everybody deserves. I think what underscores our relevance as a profession and our impact in these two priorities and in everything else we do is a particular kind of leadership, design leadership. That's a different kind of leadership than I think any other profession can offer. And in showing through our actions, not just our words, that architects are essential partners in tackling these challenges and building better communities that work for everybody, I think we have a huge role to play in catalyzing our industry and communities toward best practices in design and in design thinking, which of course is invaluable in efforts like policymaking as well.
Wonderful, thank you, Dan. And lastly, we'll go to Robert.
Thank you. Those are all wonderful focuses. ACSA is committed to equity, which is one of our core values. This past year, we focused on ensuring equitable access to all of our award programs and conference participation. We've revisited award criteria as well as review processes. So we really focused a lot on adjunct faculty, on ways that educators can move up the pipeline and that they have fair access to all of our activities. Another core value of ACSA is responsiveness. And during the pandemic, we devoted a significant amount of time creating free online webinars focusing on pivoting strategies that got amazing circulation, and they were used by university professors all over the world. This gave us all an opportunity to share as educators strategies for dealing with the pandemic and ensuring a healthy delivery of material to all of our students. And finally, as another one of the few Latinx presidents ever of this organization, I'm also a firm champion of EDI issues and how our organization can work in that realm. And ACSA is fully devoted to diversity and inclusion. And in the last 2 years, the board underwent EDI training with a consultant, Dr. Heather Hackman, who continues to work with new board members. ACSA had never done anything like this before, so it was a huge step for us. And our goal is to reconsider how ACSA as an organization can deliver the best that it can to all of its membership while being cognizant of the importance of operating with a racial equity lens in everything that we do. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we did have a note from our vice president who's on the ACSA board of directors that training was fantastic. So you're doing great work. And I said that Robert was last, but I lied. I'm actually going to be answering these questions as well for the AIS. I won't speak quite as long as the rest of our presidents because you're hearing me speak all week, but I think it's important that you know what the AIS is working on as well. So just to come right out and say it, the three main issues that the AIS is focusing on are sustainability, equity, and health. We always are focusing on educational change at the AIS, obviously, but these three things are really the future of our organization, the future of students, what students need and care about, and therefore they're the future of our profession and of our society. So delegates to the COP are actually going to see our proposed strategic plan tomorrow, which speaks to all three of these issues and how the AIS plans to make change. Our special committees every year reflect exactly what the AIS cares about at the time of their existence. So you can see that in our special committees that currently exist, how we're working in a more of a grassroots way to make change through students. That's the real power of our organization. Isn't through policy, it obviously isn't through how much money we have or anything like that. It's through the placement of our students and the grassroots efforts of you all. So yeah, the tracks of this conference as well, you can just see right here in Forum, we have our tracks are sustainability, dissent, and community. So those all speak to those three issues of equity, health, and sustainability. And sustainability obviously is a large part of educational change. It needs to be at the core of our education as architects, and we push for that every day. Our technology and sustainability task force is a representation of that. We kind of combined these two task forces the past year of technology was one and sustainability was another. And now those are combined because sustainability is architectural technology. They're not separate ideas. In equity, we obviously, I'll talk about this a little more later on, but we have our Jedi task force that's been doing amazing work, but we need to do more work within the organization and in our governance structure to change equity. So that's what we're working on right now. And that's what's reflected in our strategic plan. And then of course, health, the AIS never stops talking about health of students, cultural health, physical, mental health. These things have been extremely damaging for architecture students and for architects over the past, who knows how long, forever. So the AIS wants to change that, and we have policies out. And again, we have the model learning and teaching culture policy that was published a couple of years ago that I love, and shout out to Rebecca, who was also on that committee that worked on that document. And that's fantastic. But as I said, the power of the AIS isn't in policies, it's in grassroots movements. So that policy describes how to make a grassroots movement at your school to make architectural education and your school in general a healthier place to be and to work and to learn. So just wanted to emphasize all those three things to you while we're here talking about it. And thank you all for your answers. Those were fantastic. So moving into the kind of bulk of our question list here. And again, just a quick reminder, we're talking about changes in policy, culture, and education as our main three touch points for change. So we're going to start out with, how has your organization been working to become more equitable and to better embrace diversity? So this is more of an internal look at equity and diversity. And again, I'm going to try to be random. So we'll start with Alfred.
Great, thank you. I was hoping I'd get an opportunity to share. So I'm excited about this, obviously. As you heard, it's one of the major areas. I said this is the year we're leaning so heavily into this. So let me just share a few things that we are doing as we look at ourselves and our position and how we move forward in this area. Last summer, I realized very quickly as the new president, when we talk about EDI and that journey, we all start from different positions. We all start from different life experiences, and we don't all see it through the same lens necessarily. Therefore, I said that within the first 60 days of my presidency, we would hold a first ever town hall session focused on EDI so that we could understand from the NCARB State Licensing Board membership, what are the impediments? What are the opportunities? Where do we need to move? How can this conversation be engaged? And where are you individually in this conversation? So with great success, we held those variety of listening sessions across the country in the first 60 days. We also immediately brought on board a diversity consultant to work with us. We also brought on board a governance consultant. Part of the journey here as we look internally of where we are today is also understanding organizationally as NCARB, are we organized in a method that includes opportunities for everyone? Or do we have built-in impediments and restrictions because of time, because of travel, because of whatever it might be? What is the path to become a leader within the organization? And thus the importance of having a governance consultant that we're currently in the process of revisiting the NCARB organization and how we are currently structured. So that's exciting and heavy work that we're currently involved with. We also committed that during all of this year and even moving forward, we are having diversity training at every one of our board meetings, not only with our board, but also our incoming leaders and regional leaders as well. So that's an important, really important part of what we are doing so that we can better understand the conversations. And, words are important. And we need to understand where we are and how we position ourselves as an organization as well. A few of the other real quick things that we are doing and have done is of the ARE. We did a bias study to make sure that there was not any unconscious bias in the way that the exam is written and the test questions and the distractors. And fortunately, we received a clean bill of health, but we're going back and looking again at even that with relations to the AXP, the experience program, to make sure we don't have an unconscious bias in the connection between those two programs. Another one that was important to me is doing a base language study. I'm bilingual, and if I had been asked to have to do the ARE in another language, that might be an impediment. That might actually be a challenge, and that might impact the end result. So it's important for us to understand, well, what actually is the base language of our candidates and emerging professionals, and trying to understand what does that mean to us as well. I'm also excited that we did the first time ever last year webinars in Spanish, and with outreach to the Hispanic community and even some of the foreign community as well that was interested as well. And then the last thing that I'll leave with is our baseline on belonging study that we jointly worked together with Jason's organization, with NOMA. That is an unbelievable amount of work and data that we are unpacking, and we're starting to share and starting to do the deep dive of what does that mean to us in the larger community, and how do we affect change in the things that we can control that are within our lane? What do we as NCARB, what can we do? How do we do it? And how can we move it as quickly as possible forward? So those are just a few of the things that we're currently working with.
Great, thank you, Alfred. Let's go to Rebecca next.
I had to unmute myself. Yeah, I think our organization has had a lot of effort in recent years to try to advance more equitable situation in architecture education, as well as embracing diversity. And there's some specific things I could point to, such as board training, and we've trained team chairs. The team chair goes out and visits with the team members. We've done training of the teams themselves in relation to DEI issues. And then a huge sort of policy, I guess you could say it's a policy related thing, would be within our conditions for 2020. There's an entire program criteria. It's called Social Equity and Inclusion, and it's devoted to understanding how architecture programs that are accredited by NAB will further and deepen students' understanding of diverse cultural and social context, and then how would that translate into the built environment. And so we're very excited about advancing that. And as I mentioned, we just went through our first round of visits. Excuse me, I'm in kind of a loud area, but and so we also have a task force that is specifically related to trying to figure out the pipeline, how the the pipeline into architecture education. And so we have a standing committee that's trying to assess it, because there are a lot of barriers if people are able to come in through community colleges and then move into NAB programs. It would be better. It would be a lot better if we can make that path smooth. We've had workshops at ACSA, administrators conferences. We've had special focus sessions, et cetera. So we hope that work will advance this year. It's kind of a newly recast task force under our board director, Michael Pride. So we look forward to seeing what emerges. And then lastly, we've had some good luck, as I'm sure you have. There's everything about COVID has been terrible with the pandemic. We've actually been able to expand some of our access to people coming in to visiting teams, because everybody doesn't have to travel there anymore, at least not until I guess 2023. And so we were able to try to include more diversity in our teams as well. And we're working on that. It's a constant issue and struggle, and it has been for years. So, we're obviously open to suggestions. Some of the presidents have offered excellent suggestions as we go forward with the collateral. So I'll stop there. Again, sorry, I'm in a really busy hallway. I'm at an event where my daughter is, but I think I'll look forward to sharing some other things with you about that task force.
Great, thank you very much, Rebecca, and no worries about the noise over forum. We've had dogs barking in the background and young children screaming and all sorts of things, so it's no bother.
This is a dance. I'm in a dance competition, so anyway.
Great, wonderful. All right, well, I'll go ahead and take this question for the AIAS, so I'll go next. So I did say I was going to talk about this more later on, but we do, one of the things I'm really proud of is we have a Jedi task force right now, a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion task force. And this is a shift from last year's Social Justice Committee, if you heard of that committee. And it was kind of taking a hard look at the AIAS and saying, what did we do wrong here? How did we make change? How did we not make change with this committee? And what do we need to shift to make it better and make more change? So the Jedi task force is looking inward at the AIAS and reviewing our governance structure and making sure we have equitable strategies systemically, like Alfred was saying, and not just performatively, not just posts on Instagram, but a real part of our organization and something that we're ready to continue year after year. This is also the first year that we've had a NOMA liaison on our board of directors, which I'm really happy about. We have 3 other liaisons that we've had for quite a while. We just added our new NOMA liaison. I do, every time I mention Montreal, I want to mention that this is not a solution to any sort of diversity issue, but it's the start to a solution. It's almost the very beginning of the AIAS recognizing that we have an issue. I mean, look at our board of directors and you can tell that we're not as diverse as we should be. So the addition of a NOMA liaison will help us to get started and to review ourselves more critically. Along those lines, more diverse leadership, seeing people that look like you on a board of directors at either the chapter level or the national level tells you that this is an organization for you. So that, and again, I'll speak to grassroots changes within the AIAS. That's the power of a grassroots change. We all need to shoulder tap somebody that's more diverse than the person who came before you. Somebody who doesn't look like you, shoulder tap them because they're a good leader, not because they're like you are. And so we're working on that at a grassroots level. The AIAS is also international. In the context of the 65-year history of this organization, that's a brand new development. So there's a lot of work to be done to become a truly global organization instead of just a domestic organization that has international members. Our international ambassadors, Adon Hernandez for Latin America and Vanessa Abuhar from the Middle East, if they're in here. There are new positions on our board of directors as of last year, and every year they gain a few more responsibilities and are brought deeper into our governance structure. We're really excited about that process. And we still have problems. Adon and Vanessa are not voting members on our board of directors. That's our next big hurdle. That's something we need to take care of. But they're liaising this year our Council of Global Representatives, which in the past has been a duty of the president. And I gave that up to give it to them because it's important, again, for having diverse leadership and people in those positions who look like our Council of Global Representatives and look like our international members and are there to talk to them about their experiences. I'm from a small town, Texas. I can't relate directly to our Middle East members, and I'll talk to them about their issues all the time, but getting Vanessa there to talk to them is much more beneficial and just helps them to feel like they're part of this organization that's becoming global. So really excited about all those developments. So next we will go to Jason.
Much appreciated, Scott. Thank you. So I would say from the beginning of our founding, NOMA has always had a focus on equity and diversity, and many of our most impactful and longtime members have started and led Jedi initiatives across the country and industry. But what's interesting is during this moment with the heightened focus of DEI across our industry and the resultant growth in our membership that NOMA has experienced is we've also had to look ourselves in the mirror and answer some pretty tough questions that have been lingering for decades within NOMA. You know, are we solely a Black organization, or are we an inclusive organization that welcomes other minority groups? And the truth is we're both. We've realized that we must honor the legacy of the 12 African-American founders of NOMA and their original mission in 1971 to both diversify the profession and increase the number of licensed Black architects. As we know, the percentage of Black architects, unfortunately, has not budged in the last few decades. So it's impossible for us to focus on another primary target until we've successfully hit the first. However, the sheer size, talent, and resources NOMA has today really prevents us from turning a blind eye to the same injustices and challenges other minority groups face. And we believe that we cannot replicate the same discriminatory policies that we have faced over the years with these other groups. So today, NOMA has well over 3,000 plus members, a third of which are students, and most of our members and partners will be surprised to learn that our membership is currently made up of approximately 45% Blacks, 18% Latinx, 15% Asian Americans, and 14% white. So our membership base has really diversified over the last 4 to 5 years, and we've been working hard to structure ourselves to serve all of our members' needs while still staying true to NOMA's mission and North Star.
Awesome, thank you very much. And we'll go to Robert next.
Thanks. So I've mentioned the reassessment of our award criteria and our work with the EDI consultant to improve the organization's ability to address racial equity. We're also changing and charging our nominations committee. The nominations committee has traditionally just worked on nominating people onto the board, but now they're going to have a broader responsibility. And we want them to review nominating processes across all of ACSA's activities to ensure that our policies of nominations onto the board, but also onto our editorial boards for the 2 journals we produce, JAE and TAT, and all of our various committees ensure equitable selection and diversity. We recognize that the faculty teaching in our membership schools still do not look like our students and the populations where our universities are located. So we're working to change that by providing greater access and support across the board, and also to change the entire nomination culture that has shaped ACSA a certain way all the way to, I think, to this point. So we're hoping to make great changes moving forward.
Wonderful, thank you. And lastly, we'll go to Dan for this question.
Yeah, I'd like to start in my answer to this question by just acknowledging Jason Pugh first and foremost. Jason's leadership of NOMA, his predecessor, Kim Dowdell, his successor, Pascal Sablon, Tiffany Brown, and so many other leaders in NOMA have shouldered an incredible burden and responsibility over the last couple of years. And if you listen to all of our responses, we've all reached out and leaned on NOMA. Help us know what to do, help us know what the right thing is to do next. And of course, any effort in this area begins with empathy and listening. And we really tried to do that at the American Institute of Architects. And we're greatly indebted to Jason and his colleagues for the great partnership that we have and the wisdom that we get on a regular basis as to what's next in this area. So thank you, Jason. One of the first things you realize as you engage in this listening is that there's a lot of work to do. And so at AIA, we developed an equity framework with specific actions, obviously lining out, trying to make tangible these sometimes abstract notions, but supporting equity, diversity, inclusion across 3 different interrelated levels seem to make most sense to us. So looking at our organization, our own shop, looking at our profession more broadly, and then looking at how does this come home in our communities. So building the diverse and inclusive profession necessary to reflect our values, to realize the profession's full potential, begins in investing in you all, this audience, the next generation of architects. And so we have a number of scholarship and outreach programs that I'm proud to say are achieving record levels of support right now. So at the organizational level, we just completed 2 major audits, looking inside, looking at our own house, and our governance structure, our honors and our awards procedures. Others of my colleagues mentioned similar work in their organizations. We just received those third-party findings, and now we're working in this year to find ways to implement best practices to break down barriers to participation and recognition. Last month, we, as the AIA, released a study conducted in partnership with the UC Hastings College of the Law on workplace experiences in the profession. And so you may have seen this study come out in December. It's tough. The news is hard to see, but we know it. We know the things that were revealed in that study, we knew, I think, going in. The intention of that is to deepen, identify, address issues of bias, sexism, and racism within firm culture, to start the conversation, and ultimately to disrupt existing bias. That's what we're after. We recognize these are difficult conversations, but they're necessary. We have to have the hard conversations if we're going to see meaningful change in the profession. We've just launched a new program called Next to Lead, aimed at removing barriers to AIA leadership for ethnically diverse women. So it's a 2-year program, just kicked off. We've got 7 extremely talented women participating. They're gaining leadership skills and networking opportunities. And it's really an initiative that helps participants not just identify pathways to leadership, but the program itself is a pathway to leadership. So we're really excited about where that's headed. Additionally, our AIA Women's Leadership Summit is the largest professional gathering of women architects and designers in the country. And we offer a variety of opportunities and events through that program focused on women architects moving into leadership roles at architecture firms and beyond. And to support firms in their own diversity progress, I'm proud of the AIA's Guides for Equitable Practice. These guides are a series of research-based but practically oriented resources for firms and organizations. We've just updated them in 2020, and we're working to further update them on specific issues of justice in the built environment, and also a higher education special feature in collaboration with the ACSA. So we're excited about those developments with the guides for equitable practice.
Awesome, thank you all. So we only have about 16 minutes left, which before this call, before all the participants got on, I told our presidents here that since we only have an hour, I might hold up this yellow piece of paper if thoughts were going on too long. You'll notice I haven't done that because all the thoughts have been too good for me to do that. But keeping that in mind, we'll move to one more question, and then we'll just have to schedule another one of these calls sometime this year, because this is a great conversation. So the next one is kind of more of an external look at the previous question. I know that some of you already spoke to this, so if your answers to this are briefer, of course we will accept that. So how has your organization been working to make the profession and/or education of architecture more equitable? So in a more external sense, how are you advocating outwardly? Okay, so we'll start with Rebecca for this one.
Thanks, Scott. I've moved locations. We'll see how it goes. So, I mean, I think that the issue of equity, it is important all across our programs that are accredited by NAB. One other thing that we've done in addition to the Community College Task Force, it's actually Community College Task Force, but it's been renamed to Preparatory Education and Access Task Force, because it's not only community colleges, it's allowing more ease of transfer into NAB related programs from other preparatory programs coming in. But in addition to that, we've also revised our call for a public board member. You may know a lot of these boards are required to have public board members. They don't have anything to do with architecture, but they're generous souls that are willing to be with us and give their perspective as a non-architect or non-educator. And so we've redone our public member call, and hopefully that will allow for more expansion to different people that have sort of been coming in always through the past. So it's minor, but I think it's going to make a big change. And then we're going to try to figure out in relation to our student criteria 8, the social equity and inclusion. If once the pandemic has gone, let's hope, that which aspects will we maintain virtually in order to increase equity and keep equity that we've been able to build during this time period, and then which activities really require sort of humans on the ground interacting with each other. And so that's an area that we're trying to study over the next couple of years and see what might result out of this sort of forced virtualness over the past 2 years. So again, I mentioned the task force earlier, and hopefully we'll have a lot of growth on that this year. It's a huge part of our strategic plan, and we look forward to updating you on that, as well as working with all the collaterals to advance these issues as well.
Great, thank you for that, Rebecca. And the NAB strategic plan is much appreciated. I actually referenced it when creating this current strategic plan of the AIAS, so I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it with all of you or send you the web link if you'd like to look more closely.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you very much. Let's jump to Robert next.
Great, thank you. So through our partnerships with NAB that Rebecca just talked about, and AIA and AIAS, we're also involved in strategies to grow access into the education of the architect, and also by helping to grow partnerships with community colleges for seamless transitions between community colleges and universities. And this is something that I brought with me with my presidency. I had been working on running a program that was a partnership between El Paso Community College and Texas Tech El Paso. And I truly believe that equity and access are key in the realm of community colleges and transferability of courses. As an organization with our feet on the ground in the academic world, we also provide valuable insight into conversations that are now taking place on steps to gain licensure. Alfred talked a little bit about this. We present a very broad picture of how diverse educational pathways can better shape the profession. Our membership programs work directly with the thousands of students who pursue architecture as a degree pathway, and we welcome them into the profession and discipline through our summer high school programs. We help them intersect with numerous disciplinary and professional pathways. We set up internship programs. So every step of the way, there's an opportunity to ensure equity is a key factor as our students move through their career paths. And that's one thing that we're completely devoted to doing.
Great, thank you very much. We'll go to Dan next.
Yeah, and Robert mentioned the program Texas Tech College of Architecture in El Paso that he previously led. What an amazing program. So when Robert's talking about these issues, he's lived it, he's done it, and it's just a shining example. So thank you for that work, Robert. We're at AIA working to introduce the profession and have for a while in K-12 schools. We, in 2020, issued an updated series of lesson guides and other tools for educators, parents, students that were useful during the at-home remote schooling that we've seen in this pandemic. Our popular Build the Block resources, which is a role-playing digital game that we created for middle and high school students to be done in concert with architects. That's now web-based. It's now available to components, chapters all across the country to incorporate into their local K-12 initiatives. Through our Architects Foundation, we offer a portfolio of scholarships for students and emerging professionals. This past year alone, we've seen a 30% increase in member donors to these programs. We're really proud of that. These contributions are supporting 32 new scholarships across 8 different programs. One of those is the Association of Large Firms in AIA, the Large Firm Roundtable. That represents something like 40,000 of our members, those larger firms in the country. And they support an ARE scholarship, which through which we'll award 30 or more awards to Black or African-American licensure candidates. Last summer, we welcomed 6 students from historically Black colleges and universities to serve as paid interns as we embarked on the design of the renovation of our national headquarters in Washington. These students were virtually embedded with the design team. They gained real world experience while offering invaluable insights and perspective into the post-COVID workplace of the future. And so we're now developing a toolkit to guide firms in developing their own inclusive internship programs to try to scale this idea up. Our headquarters renovation project more generally will focus on ensuring that we embody the values and ideas that we espouse as an organization. It's not often that as architects, we get the opportunity to actually put what we say we believe into a concrete structure. And that's exactly what we have the opportunity to do with our AIA headquarters right now. So issues of sustainability and equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace of the future are key guides along the way as we embark on that design process.
Great, thank you very much, Dan. I'll go ahead and take this question now. So for the AIAS, we all recognize that education needs to shift to accept and to teach about more diverse architects and diverse architecture. And so the AIAS, again, never stopped pushing for this educational change. We have incredible power to do this in a unique sense because we can make educational change a grassroots movement. And all of you, everybody in this call and everybody that's not in this call is our kind of agents on the ground to perform that work and to be out there in these schools and to have a direct line into what's being taught in these schools and to talk to administrators and to educators about it. And I always emphasize in these discussions that professors and administrators are never our enemies in these discussions. We're here to collaborate with them and to move forward with them and to change curricula with them. So make sure that you're using the AIAS as a platform to talk about, changing homogeneous curricula, which is something our Jedi task force talked about earlier this semester, and to change the focus on the cisgender, straight, white, male architect, starchitect. That's, what architecture school commonly focuses on. I think the AIAS can make change really quickly, but as the resident young people here in this group, we're always playing the long game. And just like Robert was saying earlier, the accessibility of architectural education is absolutely the key to lasting increase in diversity in architecture. So this obviously includes financial accessibility. Architecture is one of the most expensive majors in the world. But it includes availability of resources, physical accessibility in regard to mental health. The difficulties in mental health in architecture make it inaccessible to lots of people, and accessibility of every other kind. So that's what the AIAS is working toward. And that's why I keep talking over and over about these grassroots movements and these cultural changes that need to happen, and why the AIAS has the ability to play the long game here, is we'll be here in 30, 40 years still working on these same issues, and hopefully we'll have made a lot of progress by then. So next up, we'll go to Jason.
Thanks, Scott. I would say today, in this moment, as we again celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of NOMA, we're really focused on building stronger partnerships, strategic partnerships that will carry the organization forward for the next 50 years. Partnerships that support diversifying the pipeline and next generation, expanding the recruitment, retention, and advancement of minority architects, and increasing the number of students that enter architecture programs, and ensuring that they have the resources, the tools, the mentors, and the support network to graduate, enter the profession, and successfully become licensed without falling through the cracks. We're doing this through one of our most popular and well-known programs, Project Pipeline, which at its core, has a goal to introduce young students to career opportunities in architecture and also produce more licensed architects, following these students along their career path from high school through college with their first internships, their first jobs out of school, and then with the resources that they need to become licensed. And also our new NOMA Foundation Fellowship, which pairs graduating students with internships with a wide variety of small, medium, and large architecture firms across the country. We also champion all of our members, both professional and students, to uphold our principles as stewards of the built environment and protecting the health, safety, and welfare of all of our communities, in particular marginalized and underserved communities, which I think we know normally do not have a voice or vote with development in their backyards. I'll close in saying that we're really excited today to have a seat at the table and be welcomed into the fold by the 5 collaterals and as the 6th anchor institution. And we're positively hopeful about the impactful work that we can accomplish working together with all of the organizations that are on this panel for the years to come. As Dan mentioned earlier, this work is not easy and it will not be accomplished overnight. We're all engaged in some really difficult conversations, trying to answer some really tough questions. But as my peers have mentioned in their responses, this is necessary. So we're really hopeful in this moment.
Wonderful, thank you. And finally, we'll go to Alfred.
Thank you. Well, I will be quick as I know are at the top of the hour. For several years now, NCARB has been advocating for exploring the possibility of an accredited 4-year program. Now, I want to be very clear, there's no way we're suggesting that the 5-year or 6 needs to go away or be abandoned. But I think our interest lies in the what if possibility looking forward. Is this a potential affordable entry point into the profession? And in addition to that, what part does the community college play in this journey as well, as Robert and others have so carefully articulated as well? So what we are hearing, and I'm sure all of you as well, is the cost factor of education. We understand the 5-year, the 6-year, even a 4-year program, and the cost is tremendous. And it is sometimes a burden as one enters into the profession and carries that with them for many, many years. So we think this is an important conversation and hope that our colleagues will continue to push and explore the potential of a 4-year program and what that might look like. And the things that we've been able to do within our lane is back in 2015, we created the IPAL program, Integrated Path to Licensure, which does allow a student that is enrolled in an IPAL program to be able to complete the AXP and ARE while in school with the ultimate goal of licensure upon graduation. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you all. As Alfred said, we are at the top of the hour, so we'll have to wrap up. We got to 3 questions, which is pretty good. But like I said, we should schedule another one of these calls. This has been a fantastic conversation, and thank you all for coming again. Maybe just to pat the AIAS on the back one more time a little bit. This is a really unique thing to have this panel of these 6 amazing leaders all in one place to talk to, the future of the profession and the future of the Society of Architecture. So we love to see it, and thank you all for attending. And presidents, thank you again.
Thank you, Scott, for hosting. This is truly remarkable. It's really great. Honestly, probably something that I think all of us should probably replicate within our own conferences and sessions. So thank you for hosting. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Agreed. Thank you, Scott.
All of you.
So our board of directors candidates, you have a call to go to. And the rest of us, we have our next general session, our final general session of forum starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. So I'll see you there. Mike Ford will be speaking as our keynote. So that's going to be fantastic. And I'll see you all later today.